Hi, good morning and hello to everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar. The topics we'll be covering is the changing consumer perceptions and behaviours being brought about by COVID-19 pandemic. And really what restaurants, casual dining, QSR businesses should be thinking about as they're reopening their doors to the public. Today I'm going to be your host. My name is Joe Stapleton. I'm the Sales Director here at Marketforce Information Europe. I'm headquartered in our Milton Keynes office. I've been with the business 7.5 years now. I'm really excited today to be leading this talk through of our consumer sentiment study, and also letting Ira, who's our Global SVP of Sales and Marketing here at Marketforce Information, take you through an exciting new partnership that we formed with Bureau Veritas, who are a certification company that really do excel in giving safety certifications out, and specifically how they're supporting restaurants get back on their feet and restart their business. Ira, why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, thanks, Joe. My name's Ira Davies. I'm SVP of Global Sales and Marketing, and I'm excited to share with you the information regarding the recent consumer sentiment study that we conducted in June, and also talk to you about our relationship with Bureau Veritas, as Joe pointed out. Joe, back to you.
The focus of this webinar really will be consumer sentiment measurement series. Specifically, we'll be looking at the latest wave, which we conducted in June. But really, if you would like to go through the whole series, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We ran this through April and May, so through the height of the lockdown. And if you'd like some information on what consumer perception was through that time period, please do get in touch. Really, we embarked on this study right at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic to make sure we captured that change in the environment. Our goal was to track that consumer perception over time and really understand how consumer perceptions were impacted. Since April, what are the key learnings? What are the headlines? I think it's clear and fair to say that consumers are still concerned. 80% were in complete agreement that lockdown and social distance requirements were appropriate. 50% of them, or just over 50%, thought that the world as we knew it will be changing. In fact, we learned that 20% of consumers actually throughout this time period tried a new restaurant brand. The drivers for this change were fairly interesting. Obviously, there were the fairly simplistic ones, such as the normal option not being open, or restaurants having the channels available, such as drive-throughs and collections, but actually visibly seeing less traffic, less queues, was a driver for consumers to go to any restaurant. If they felt it wasn't busy, the queue wasn't dense, that it would actually be safer. During these trips to restaurants, the collections, 47% of the guests observed heightened cleaning and sanitations. Personally, I actually think that's pretty low considering the heightened expectation around sanitation and cleaning. But actually 74% saw signage, which increased their confidence. This was really one of the first insights that simply putting content on window walls, and in some cases the floors, we've all seen those big circles that, spell out where you need to stand and maintain that 2-meter distance, actually drove consumer confidence and built trust with that brand. However, only 32% of people were actually completely satisfied with what they saw employees doing during these visits. I think it's fair to say that it's no easy task any brand's got in front of them. Building confidence is difficult, and ultimately brand trust is what's going to make sure your trade returns to what it is. But there's so much to consider. Like when you think just on this slide alone, we've got a number of different factors to evaluate, such as staff wearing proper PPE, contactless restroom fittings, hand sanitizer dispensers. There's a lot out there. And how do you stay on top of that all? Ira, what are your thoughts on this and what you're seeing over in North America?
Yeah, what the reality of it is that an organization can spend millions of pounds investing in a COVID-19 program and it be world class. But one individual not wearing the correct PPE can obliterate any relaunch program that's been set upon. So the ability to be able to make sure that all of these areas are being addressed is critical to a successful reopening of your facility and relaunch of 2020.
Yeah, and I think before we dive into the actual study itself, it's worth probably mentioning it's not just getting these right, it's knowing which ones to kind of have in your evaluation. What are the correct procedures to be following? What are the correct PPE measurements to have in place? And I think that's really where BV and the partnership with Bureau Veritas leans in. They are having those evaluations sponsored and made sure they're correct by the Cleveland Clinic to validate that effort. So I think that's a really important thing that companies need to consider. It's where are those correct measures and who's the right person to talk to about getting those in place. But moving swiftly into the actual consumer sentiment study on the next slide. Our third wave engaged over 1,000 consumers in the UK. Like I said before, it was run between 24th and the 26th of June. The majority of the respondents were female, and 70% earned over 25,000 per year. So it's a really good sample. It's fairly representative. We're slightly lower in the millennial section, but other than that, we've got good distribution by those that are represented age groups on the slide to the right there. I think the main thing, what did we learn from this? Again, like we said at the start, with that 80% number of people being still concerned and thinking it was the right measure to go into lockdown, they're still concerned. Even as that lockdown eases, we're seeing concern is still prevalent within the consumers. They're still much or very much interested in visiting the restaurants when they can, but what's the real important factor for them is seeing those safety standards. Like we saw on that slide before, there's so many different touch points that you need to get right to build that trust and make sure consumers are comfortable dining out. What we found was that just over 6 out of 10 consumers indicated they were either concerned or very concerned about a second outbreak, showing that this is still a big consideration whilst we are relaxing those lockdown rules for many people out there, and sure going to impact the trade that those pubs and restaurants are seeing. We want to understand where the people would want to go when they're free, wherever to go, wherever they want, now that those lockdown rules have been relaxed. And the number one response was clear. It really is dine at a restaurant. 85% of our respondents told us this. 68% of them still wanted to go and visit a retail store. I'm certainly one of those people that has visited the shopping centre and got my retail fix. But really, restaurants have a unique opportunity to capture traffic as consumers have the confidence to ease back into the marketplace. And we want to help them take advantage of that. But with that comes an expectation. Compliance matters, both front and back of house. I think even more so is what they can't see. I think it's all well and good to get the sanitizer right, those employees wearing the mask, those visible impacts that build consumer trust. But actually 79% indicated safety standards were the most important. And it was around those areas, back of house, kitchen, those that are not accessible to customers. So this really got us thinking about how we as a business could ensure consumer trusts in things that they can't see. So we asked the question, and it was very clear that 63% of consumers would be more likely to visit a restaurant if it had been publicly certified as compliant with COVID-19 safety standards. And further to this, if you add the agree and completely agree, that actually takes you up to 82%, that the panel said they'd be reassured if they had that public certification. So it's really important to get those posters up in the window, whether it's through Bureau Veritas or another source, to make sure that you do have some form of certification, to make sure you've got that consumer's trust and that they can relax in your environment like they did before this pandemic. I think if we break that down further, looking at who this was most important to, it was with the older age groups. We saw those 55 years and older, up to the 70 plus range, were more likely to visit a location that was certified, as 70% even, 70% and over for those age groups. We saw that at least 50% or more of every other age group, it had an impact as well for the likelihood for them to visit those locations, with the exception of those 25 to 34-year-olds that didn't see it as such a heightened thing to have in place. So with the notion of restaurant certification as the backdrop of building trust and confidence, what I really want to do is turn you over to Ira so he can start explaining the partnership that Market Force has formed with Bureau Veritas to really help restaurant businesses kickstart and restart their business.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So our relationship with Bureau Veritas is extremely important to organizations that are trying to relaunch for 2020. Bureau Veritas, for those of you that may not be familiar with the name, is an organization that's been doing business for almost 200 years. Their primary focus and objective is around verification and certification of processes and equipment and overall business practices. The goal of our program is to help your employees safely back to work, and we're going to do that through the relationship with Bureau Veritas. We'll certify that your policies have been implemented consistently and that they will achieve ongoing compliance with local government regulatory as well as your industry best practices to ensure that when your clients visit your location, they can do so with a high level of confidence. So the solution is really made up of 6 specific steps. The ability for us to review your policies, the ability to help you complete your policies should they be lacking in any area, and then be able to visit each one of your locations to check that these policies are being adhered to and are being followed. We would then report that back to you via our customer portal. And then should you score high enough to award you the label will be provided to you that you can affix that label either on the front door or in any location you see fit. And then to make sure that those processes and procedures are being followed, we would come back either weekly, monthly, to double check that those policies are being followed. So these verifications really are a 2-stage process. As we said, we would come in, we would validate them, we would consult with you to make sure that those policies were being smoothly implemented. And so when we conduct the on-site audit to verify that there is no corrective actions required.
Thank you for that, Ira. Really, really good to understand what that partnership looks like and how it can support restaurants restart their business. If you have any questions at all on either the consumer sentiment measure study that Market Force has conducted throughout this time period, or you'd like to know more about the partnership that we've formed with Bureau Veritas, please do get in touch. We'd welcome the conversation and we really look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you for your time all. Cheers now.